Before we enter the history of the Islamic states, we must take a step back to before the message, to the Arabian Peninsula, where the first environment that produced Islam was formed, and where the Arabs lived in a harsh, vast, and diverse world, between desert and mountain and plain and wadi, and between nomadism and civilization, and between a tribe seeking survival and a city open to trade, politics, and religion. The Arabian Peninsula was a huge expanse in the southwest of Asia, surrounded by seas on three sides, and connected to the north with the Levant and Iraq. This location was not just a geographical detail, it was a factor that influenced the Arabs' lives, their trade, their movements, and their contact with the surrounding world. But the nature of the land was the primary ruler. There were vast deserts, endless sands, mountains, plateaus, coastal plains, and the few oases that gave life to whoever could settle around them. Rain was scarce in most areas, irregular, and did not always come when people expected it. Therefore, life in large parts of the peninsula remained a struggle against drought, scarcity, and the constant need for water and pasture. From this environment grew the dispositions of society. In the desert regions, people relied on herding and mobility. They carried their tents, followed their herds, and searched for grass and water. In areas where water or fertile soil were available, a more stable life emerged, based on agriculture or trade or settlement in villages and towns. Thus, the Arabs before Islam were not a single image. There were nomads, and there were townsmen. The differences between them were clear, but they did not prevent continuous ties between the two. The nomad needed the town for trade and services, and the townsman needed the nomads for protection, mediation, and sometimes for movement between regions. Arab historians divided them into groups: the extinct Arabs, the ancient tribes that vanished, such as Ad, Thamud, Tumud, Jadis, and the Amalekites, and the Arab Arabs, whose origin is Yemen, including Qahtan, and the Arabized Arabs, the Adnanites, who trace their lineage to Ismail, son of Ibrahim, peace be upon them. Ismail settled in Mecca, learned Arabic, and married into the Arabs, producing a large number of Arabs. But Arab society in the Jahiliyyah was not merely lineages and tribes. It was a complete social system, led by the tribe. The tribe was homeland, protection, identity, and law. In the absence of a unifying state, a person drew strength from his kin. Those without a tribe were weak and exposed. Those who had a strong tribe found defenders, avengers, and protection for their wealth and blood. Hence arose Asabiya, tribal solidarity. Asabiya was not merely a feeling of pride. It was a lifeline. It drove the tribe's members to stand together in peace and war, in right and wrong, because survival itself was tied to this cohesion. The tribe had a sheikh, often a man of judgment, age, and experience.
But he was not an absolute monarch. He derived his position from the approval of his people, from his wisdom, generosity, courage, and ability to unite them. Wars between tribes occurred for many reasons: pasture, water, revenge, honor, or rivalry. A war could continue for many years, becoming part of a tribe's memory, its poetry, and its chronicles. Among the most famous of these wars in Arab consciousness are the Basus War, Dahis and Gabra, and the Fijar Wars. Yet the Jahiliyyah was not absolute chaos without values. There was generosity, courage, rescue, loyalty, hospitality, protection, and pride in chivalry. These values appeared in poetry, stories, and the conduct of knights and leaders. But alongside that, there were also harsh customs, manifestations of social injustice, class disparities, enslavement, and the low status of certain groups, and the spread of practices that Islam later came to change, refine, or regulate differently. As for economic life, it varied by environment. In the desert, herding was primary. Camels were the backbone of life because they were best suited to endure drought and mobility. With them, the Arabs carried their goods, traveled through the wastes, and faced the harshness of the road. In oases and fertile areas, agriculture appeared. Grains, fruits, palm trees, and some crops tied to the nature of the place were cultivated. As for trade, it held great importance, especially in Mecca. Mecca was not an ordinary city. It was in the heart of the Hijaz, on an important trade route between Yemen and the Levant. The Kaaba gave it a special religious status that made Arabs visit it and preserved its sanctity in hearts. From here, Quraysh gained a prominent position. They practiced trade, organized caravans, and formed arrangements, ilaf, to secure their caravans. They had a winter journey to Yemen and a summer journey to the Levant. With trade came wealth, influence, and the need for organization. Within Mecca, a distinct social and political system emerged. There was no state in the modern sense, but Quraysh managed its affairs through leadership, status, and custom. The elite played a clear role: the nobles, notable figures, and those of influence in Mecca. There were functions connected to the Kaaba and pilgrimage, such as water-bearing, hospitality, guarding, and the banner. These functions were not mere services, but symbols of sovereignty, honor, and status. Over time, Quraysh's clans competed for these positions because whoever served the house and controlled trade held a large share of Meccan influence. But the peninsula was not only Mecca. In the north, Arab kingdoms arose, influenced by the great powers around them. There was the Nabatean kingdom, which flourished in the north of the peninsula and made Petra an important center on trade routes.
Their civilization was a blend of Arab and neighboring influences, and they left traces in architecture, language, and commerce. There was the Palmyra kingdom, which stood at an important site between Iraq and the Levant, and flourished commercially and politically until it clashed with Roman power. Zenobia rose there, who tried to expand her realm before her kingdom fell under Roman pressure. There was the Ghassanid kingdom, Arabs from Yemen who migrated to the Levant and allied with the Byzantine Romans. They lived in a zone between the desert and civilization, reached a high level of urbanism, and were influenced by the Romans in some aspects of governance and life. There was the Lakhmid kingdom of Al-Hira, also known as the Munadrids, on the edge of Iraq. It had ties to the Persians and prospered through trade and location, and played an important cultural role in transmitting knowledge and literature to the peninsula. In the south, ancient states and kingdoms existed in Yemen. Among the oldest was the Ma'in state, known for trade and its position between Najran and Hadramaut. Then came Saba, associated with the Marib Dam, agriculture, and stability. The dam's collapse, changing trade routes, and competition among powers were reasons for decline and turmoil. Then the Himyarite state arose, which inherited much of southern heritage and extended its influence, but it experienced internal conflicts and external pressures, with various powers succeeding it before Islam's emergence. Before Islam, the Arabian Peninsula was flanked by two great powers: to the east, the Persian Empire; to the north and west, the Byzantine Roman Empire. These two powers vied with each other and influenced the peninsula's margins, supporting allied Arab kingdoms. The Ghassanids were linked to the Romans, and the Lakhmids to the Persians. But this struggle between the great powers was not merely territorial. It affected trade, politics, religion, and stability across the region. Religiously, the situation was diverse. Some Arabs retained traces of monotheism, others worshipped idols, some adhered to Judaism, Christianity, or Mazdakism, and some had no clear belief. Polytheism was widespread. Some Arabs worshipped idols, gave them names, associated them with tribes and places, and gave them a place in worship and custom. The Kaaba, despite its association with Abraham and Ismail, peace be upon them, had been surrounded by many pagan practices. Nevertheless, in Arab consciousness remained remnants of veneration for the house, pilgrimage, the sacred months, and some ancient rites. Here an important paradox appears. Amid plurality and unrest, tendencies towards monotheism and rejection of idol worship began to emerge. Judaism and Christianity were also present in some parts of the peninsula, especially in Yemen, Najran, and some urban centers. But this presence did not unify the Arabs religiously. Society remained fragmented in beliefs and practices until Islam arrived with a new vision, a different call, and a comprehensive system for life.
Culturally, poetry was the Arabs' register. In it they preserved their news, genealogies, glories, wars, and wisdom. The poet was the tribe's voice, its tongue, and its moral weapon. Seasonal markets like Ukaz and Dhu al-Majaz were arenas for poetry, oratory, trade, and boasting. There Arabs met, exchanged goods, recited poetry, got to know one another, disputed at times, and competed in eloquence and status. Education was not widespread throughout the peninsula, but writing and reading existed in some towns, especially Mecca, Yathrib, and parts of the Hijaz and Yemen. Nevertheless, oral culture remained the broadest and strongest. Thus, when we look at the Jahiliyyah era, we do not see an empty space before Islam. We see a complete world with harsh geography, a tightly knit tribal society, a diversified economy of herding, agriculture, and trade, fragmented local politics, kingdoms in the north and south, an international struggle between Persia and Rome, and a religion mixed of remnants of monotheism, manifestations of polytheism, and other faiths. That world contained elements of strength, courage, generosity, loyalty, eloquence, and endurance. It also contains serious weaknesses: asabiya, division, blood feuds, absence of political unity, social injustice, and religious disorder. Then the message came. But before we understand its effect, we must understand the land in which it was revealed. Islam did not appear in a vacuum. It appeared in a society that knew the tribe, revered honor, mastered language, and lived between trade and desert, between the fear of poverty and the desire for sovereignty, between the sanctuary and the marketplaces, between idols and the remnants of Abraham's call. From here the great story begins, the Arabs' transition from the fragmented world of Jahiliyyah to the era of the message.